As the summer heat blanketed Memphis, a hush fell over the crowd gathered outside Graceland. Candles flickering, radios softly playing Elvis's voice one last time. Inside, the air was thick with sorrow and disbelief. But amid the sea of tear-streaked faces, someone stood out. Whispers rippled through the mourners as unexpected figures emerged from the shadows. A beloved film star, a soul music legend, even someone from the highest circles of power. But one attendee, an iconic American hero, slipped in quietly, unnoticed by many. Who was it? You'll want to see this to believe it. On August 16, 1977, the world stood still. News broke that Elvis Presley, the undisputed king of rock and roll, had died suddenly at the age of 42. In an instant, headlines from Memphis to Tokyo carried the heartbreaking news. Fans wept openly in the streets, record stores sold out of his albums within hours, and radio stations across the globe played his songs on an endless loop. The man whose music had electrified generations was gone, leaving behind a silence that felt almost unreal. It was the kind of loss that didn't just touch fans, it stunned entire nations. At Graceland, once a beacon of life and celebration, the atmosphere shifted into something sacred. The iron gates that had always welcomed adoring crowds were now draped in black. Inside, rooms that once pulsed with laughter, impromptu jam sessions, and the vibrant energy of Elvis's inner circle had gone still. Outside, a blanket of floral tributes covered the lawn. Roses, lilies, and handwritten notes sent from every corner of the world. The air was thick with heat and grief as fans held candlelit vigils and clutched transistor radios close to their chests, as if hoping his voice might still carry them through the heartbreak. Graceland was no longer just his home. It had become a monument to a global outpouring of love and loss. But not all who came to mourn Elvis were known to the public. Beyond the teary-eyed fans and grieving family members, there were quiet arrivals. Figures whose very presence raised eyebrows and left many asking, why were they here? These weren't just fellow musicians or close friends. Some came from unexpected walks of life, names that hadn't appeared in the tabloids nor in the public eye for years. Some mourners, it seems, had stories to tell and connections to Elvis that the world had never known until now. At the heart of the mourning stood Vernon Presley, a father shattered by a loss too great for words. While the world grieved a legend, Vernon grieved his son. He had always been there, through Elvis's meteoric rise, his private struggles, and the chaos that came with unimaginable fame. But now, inside the walls of Graceland, Vernon faced the unthinkable, saying goodbye to the boy he had raised from humble roots in Tupelo to the pinnacle of global stardom. His face, once so familiar and resolute, was lined with devastation. Surrounded by cameras, mourners, and flowers, he stepped forward to speak, not as the father of a superstar, but as a man utterly broken. His words were simple, trembling, and unforgettable. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, I want to thank you for the cards, letters, and flowers you've sent since Elvis's passing. Your love and support mean the world to our family during this difficult time. The crowd stood silent, holding its breath. Then, almost as a whisper to the heavens, Vernon added something that would haunt those who heard it. Daddy will be with you soon. It was a phrase that cut through the formalities, revealing the depth of his heartbreak. A father making a quiet vow to reunite with his only child, no matter how unbearable the distance between them now seemed. While millions mourned the icon Elvis had become, Vernon mourned the boy he once rocked to sleep, the young man he watched turn into a phenomenon, and the son he tried desperately to protect from a world that often asked too much. His grief wasn't staged or rehearsed. It was raw, exposed, and deeply human. In those moments, the public spectacle of Elvis's funeral melted away, revealing the real cost of loss, the kind that no stage or spotlight could ever prepare a parent to endure. And yet, in Vernon's sorrow, there was a quiet dignity, a reminder that behind every legend is a family left behind to carry the weight of love and memory. Graceland, once alive with the energy of Elvis's laughter and music, had transformed into something far more solemn, almost sacred. The cheerful notes once painted on the front gates now sat beneath black mourning drapes, their sparkle dimmed by sorrow. Every inch of the sprawling lawn was blanketed in flowers. Sunflowers from the Midwest, orchids from Hawaii, hand-picked roses from Europe, sent by grieving fans who had never met Elvis, but felt they had known him all their lives. Each bouquet carried a story, a memory, or a silent prayer. Inside the Jungle Room, once a quirky, vibrant escape filled with green shag carpet and exotic decor, was heavy with silence. There were no guitars strumming, no impromptu jam sessions, just the soft hum of grief clinging to the walls. Beyond the estate, the world mourned in unison. Radios from Memphis to Manila played his songs on loop, like a heartbeat shared across time zones. In living rooms and parked cars, people clung to the crackling voices of DJs delivering tribute after tribute. Songs like Can't Help Falling in Love and Love Me Tender took on new meaning. No longer just ballads, but elegies. Across oceans, across languages, Elvis's voice became the thread stitching together a global wave of heartbreak. For many, it was their only way to say goodbye, to feel connected to something, someone they had grown up with, danced to, cried with, and believed in. Despite the sweltering August heat, thousands made the pilgrimage to Memphis, unwilling to let distance or discomfort keep them from standing outside the gates of Graceland. Some clutched vinyl records, others brought candles or hand-drawn portraits. People fainted from heat and exhaustion, but no one left. It wasn't just a crowd, it was a movement of grief, an unspoken promise that Elvis would not be forgotten. And in the middle of it all, as sorrow blanketed the city, a few faces in that crowd caught quiet glances. Faces so unexpected, their presence would leave fans and insiders alike stunned for years to come. Some of Elvis's mourners were more than just fans. They were legends in their own right. In a crowd brimming with sorrow, a handful of familiar faces stood out like echoes from another world. They moved quietly, respectfully, but their presence didn't go unnoticed. These weren't just fellow entertainers or passing acquaintances. These were icons, each with their own place in history, who had at some point crossed paths with Elvis in unforgettable ways. And now in death, they returned to Graceland, not for a spectacle, but to honor a man who had touched their lives in ways the public never fully knew. Among them was Anne Margaret, the Hollywood co-star whose chemistry with Elvis in Viva Las Vegas had once lit up the screen and stirred rumors that never quite faded. Dressed in mourning black, her appearance was quiet, her demeanor solemn. By her side stood her husband, Roger Smith, but it was her connection to Elvis that hung in the air like a soft chord left unresolved. Then there was James Brown, the godfather of soul, whose own revolutionary influence on music paralleled Elvis's in many ways. He arrived not as a rival, but as a peer, a fellow pioneer who had reshaped sound and culture. Their shared respect was known in life, and now it was etched into this moment of farewell. But perhaps most surprising was the sight of Caroline Kennedy, the daughter of President John F. Kennedy, blending quietly among the mourners. Her presence bridged an unexpected gap between political royalty and pop culture legacy. Alongside her, others paid their respects. George Hamilton, ever poised but deeply subdued. Sammy Davis Jr., a trailblazer who, like Elvis, challenged racial lines through performance and authenticity. And Colonel Tom Parker, the manager who had orchestrated Elvis's meteoric rise and now faced the reality of life without his star. Together, they stood not as celebrities, but as human beings brought together by a single thread of connection to the man they had all known in different ways, and whose death had left them unexpectedly, deeply shaken. Among the many mourners who came to pay their respects, one tribute remained almost entirely hidden from the public eye, until whispers began to circulate. It wasn't a grand entrance or a moment caught by the cameras. It was private, intentional, and profoundly unexpected. John Wayne, the legendary cowboy of American cinema, known for his steely gaze and all-American grit, had quietly honored Elvis in his own way. On the surface, the two men couldn't have been more different. Wayne, the icon of rugged frontier justice, and Elvis, the swiveling, soulful heartthrob who redefined rebellion. But beneath those contrasting images was a deep mutual respect few ever realized. This moment mattered more than people understood at the time. It wasn't just a celebrity offering condolences. It was a symbolic crossover of eras and archetypes. John Wayne represented a bygone ideal of masculinity, stoic, strong, unbending. Elvis, on the other hand, embodied a new generation of expression, vulnerable, daring, unafraid to fuse gospel with blues, to shake the rules. That this tribute occurred at all was a silent acknowledgement of something greater, that even the icons of old recognized the seismic shift Elvis had brought to American culture. It was as if Wayne, the cowboy of yesterday, tipped his hat to the king of tomorrow. More than anything, this unexpected tribute reminded us of Elvis's unparalleled reach. His music, his image, his spirit. None of it fit neatly into any one category. He wasn't just a singer or an actor or even a heartthrob. He was a force that drew people in from every corner of society, from rockers to royals, from soul singers to screen legends. The presence, or even just the homage, of someone like John Wayne underscored a powerful truth. Elvis didn't just break records, he broke boundaries. And in doing so, he united worlds that once seemed galaxies apart. In the shadow of unimaginable grief, two figures stood with a quiet grace that captured the hearts of onlookers. Priscilla Presley and her young daughter, Lisa Marie. Priscilla, ever composed yet visibly heartbroken, held tightly to her daughter's hand as they moved through the sea of mourners. At just 9 years old, Lisa Marie looked both fragile and brave, an image that would stay with those who saw her, a child forced to confront a loss too large to comprehend. Together, they were symbols of resilience, bearing the weight of personal tragedy while the world watched. In their silence, there was strength. In their embrace, a portrait of love unbroken by loss. Nearby, another presence added a haunting layer to the sorrow that blanketed Graceland. Minnie Mae Presley, affectionately known as Dodger, Elvis's grandmother, attended the funeral with a sorrow etched deep into her 89-year-old face. She had already buried her own son, Vernon's twin Jesse, and now she faced the loss of both her grandson and later her son as well. Frail but unyielding, Minnie Mae's attendance was a sobering reminder of the toll that fame and heartbreak had taken on the Presley family. For a woman who had witnessed the arc of Elvis's life from humble beginnings to unimaginable heights, this day marked the cruelest twist in a story she had lived from the front row. The casket itself was carried not by strangers, but by Elvis's inner circle, men who had stood beside him in moments of triumph and turmoil alike. George Klein, Joe Esposito, Jerry Schilling, Billy Smith, names not always known to the public, but deeply woven into the fabric of Elvis's life. They had shared laughter in backstage dressing rooms, traveled thousands of miles together, weathered personal storms, and celebrated career highs. Now their shoulders bore the literal weight of goodbye. It was a final act of loyalty, heartbreaking and solemn, as they carried not just a friend, but a brother, one last time through the gates of Graceland. And yet the story of loss didn't end there. Just 2 years later, Vernon Presley, whose broken voice had once trembled through a thank you to the world, passed away as well. His health had deteriorated under the crushing weight of sorrow. The light in his eyes dimmed from the moment he said goodbye to his son. With Vernon's death, the Presley family's story closed a tragic chapter, one marked by astonishing talent, relentless public scrutiny, and profound personal sacrifice. In the end, it wasn't just a farewell to Elvis. It was the quiet collapse of a family that had given everything to the world and paid a price far beyond fame. Elvis may have left the building, but the lives he touched, from everyday fans to world leaders, still carry echoes of his voice, his charm, and his legacy. His presence wasn't just felt in sold-out arenas or on vinyl records. It lived in the hearts of those who found joy, healing, or even courage through his music. And in the quiet corners of his funeral, in the solemn faces of those who gathered, it became clear Elvis's story didn't end with his passing. It lives on in the lives he changed, the genres he shattered, and the generations he continues to inspire. Now that you've seen the incredible faces that stood among the crowd, we want to hear from you. Were you surprised by who showed up? Was there one name that caught you completely off guard? Maybe someone you didn't even know had a connection to the king? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're listening, and we'd love to know what moment struck you the most. And if Elvis's music still lives in your heart, if you ever found yourself singing along to his ballads or dancing to his early rock and roll hits, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories, behind-the-scenes moments, and emotional journeys from the icons who changed the world. This is just one of many chapters in a much bigger story.